Welcome to the development and pre-production of the famous Mercedes W124. This car had been in development for several years and was the pinnacle of motoring at the time of its launch. It was the very first E-Class model from Mercedes-Benz. Right now, you are looking at the period of development between 1980 and 1983. The Mercedes W124 went into series production in late 1984. The goal of this model was to improve fuel consumption by reducing weight and improving aerodynamics, incorporating advanced electronics and safety features, and to improve ride comfort and build quality. Right now, you are watching the development and tuning of the crankshaft and the continuous improvement of the future engine. This executive car was produced from 1984 to 1997. In those days, Mercedes was at its peak and ruled the automotive world. It could therefore afford to invest incredible resources in development and improvement. Mercedes-Benz used this opportunity to optimize the manufacturing process by making a universal bore size for all four engines, thus achieving two identical cylinder blocks and altering stroke ratio using a range of crankshafts and rods, rather than having to machine four sets of blocks for a universal stroke. Attentively addressing the issue of diesel emissions, Mercedes-Benz made a major modification to the redesigning the cylinder head pre-chambers with angled fuel injection, allowing more efficient combustion and small power boost. The particulate filter location was moved away from the engine. Injection pumps would get altitude correction. A 40% reduction in emissions would be achieved as a result. The early 1980s was also the period of the beginning of computer technology. From today's point of view, developers' efforts to transfer aerodynamic or other car data to a computer are laughable. It should be remembered, however, that this approach to car development was quite progressive at the time and has persisted to this day. Given the luxury status of the E-Class, great emphasis was placed on optimizing the chassis and suspension. At the time of launch, the ride comfort inside this Mercedes was unrivaled. Right now, you're watching the door and hood durability tests and the prototype crash test. Mercedes-Benz in the 1980s and 90s was obsessed with passive safety. Mercedes conducted full-scale crash tests in-house that were quite advanced for the time. In the 1990s, as Euro NCAP was still developing, there weren't standardized crash test ratings like today, but the W141 outperformed most rivals of its time in safety assessments by insurance and transport authorities. The W124 underwent an extensive pre-production phase, as Mercedes-Benz was known for rigorous testing before release. Millions of kilometers were logged across extreme environments: hot deserts, icy roads, mountain passes. You are now watching the testing of the brake system and the optimization of the discs and pads. The most powerful variants of this model could go up to 250 kilometers per hour, which is 155 miles per hour. The W124 set a new standard for executive cars and became legendary for its reliability and durability, especially in diesel variants. Many are still on the road today, some with over 500,000 kilometers on the clock. Production planning also began during this time, with Mercedes retooling parts of its Sindelfingen plant and introducing more automation and quality control measures to ensure consistency. The W124 debuted in November 1984 at the Seville, Spain press launch, marketed initially as the 200 to 300 series. It wasn't until later that the E-Class naming convention became standardized. Initial reception was overwhelmingly positive. Critics praised the car's refinement, handling, quietness, and build quality. Buyers appreciated its elegant but restrained design and the perception of owning a car built to last a lifetime. Now you're watching the airjets circle the car. This testing shows the weak points in the aerodynamics of the car and is also used in the development of today's cars. Welcome inside the Mercedes-Benz factory. This is where the luxurious Mercedes W116 was manufactured in the 1970s. The production process starts here. Pressing of car body parts made of sheet steel. Very heavy coils of steel plate are pressed in huge pressing machines, similar to today's car factories. This Mercedes-Benz series was the flagship luxury sedan produced between 1972 and 1980. It was the first model to be officially classified as an S-Class. In total, almost 500,000 Mercedes cars of this model were produced. In the late 1970s, this Mercedes sold for $38,000. Right now, you're watching footage from inside the Sindelfingen factory in Germany. This is also where the Mercedes-Benz S-Class is produced today. Over 300,000 cars are currently produced here every year. This model became the first production car to use an electronic four-wheel multi-channel anti-lock braking system, making ABS an option from 1978. Today, over 33,000 workers are employed in this factory, of which nearly 22,000 are employed directly on the assembly line. In the 1970s, a similar number worked here thanks to less robotization. Right now, workers are preparing the steel chassis frame for welding to the body. They work as a team with protective gloves and goggles. Back in the 1970s, body welding was already largely automated by robotic hands. It should be mentioned that this German Mercedes factory was one of the most modern in the world at the time. However, when welding some of the body parts, the employees had to take a welder and solder the joints by hand. In the welding shop, each steel body was given its original number plate. Currently, 15% of all Mercedes-Benz vehicles are produced at the Sindelfingen plant. This factory was founded in 1915 and is the largest production plant of the Daimler Group. Mercedes W116 featured a more stable security passenger cell with a stiffened roof frame structure. High-strength roof and door pillars, along with other reinforced zones, provided enhanced vehicle occupant protection. After welding the bodywork, workers must manually sand down the defective parts. They used a hand grinder to do this. This first S-Class model incorporates a wide range of Mercedes-Benz safety innovations, such as crumple zones at the front and rear. Another improvement was the fuel tank, which was no longer located in the rear of the car, but was placed above the rear axle for greater protection. Now the bodywork is hung in the bracket, and on rails in the ceiling, it is completely immersed in anti-corrosion fluid. This prevents the car from corroding. This is the reason why such a large number of these cars are still running today, more than 40 years after they were built. Now the worker manually sprays a protective sealant on the selected areas and joints. The bodywork is raised up for this activity to allow easy access from below. The last part in the paint shop is spraying the final top coat on the bodywork. White, black, or gold were popular in the 70s, but there were dozens of different colors to choose from. Once the painting is complete, the bodywork is left to dry. To speed up the drying process, the bodies are slowly transported to a special drying room where temperatures are high. While the bodywork is being completed, the entire front dashboard block, including the speedometer, is being built in another part of the factory complex. North America was a key market for the W124. The 300 SD, the world's first passenger car with a turbocharged diesel engine, was launched in the United States and Canada in 1978. The S-Class model with the turbo diesel engine was exclusive to the North American and Japanese markets until 1991. W124 was first modeled from Mercedes-Benz to feature the hydrop pneumatic suspension system. The hydraulic pump was driven by the timing chain instead of a rubber belt for more reliability. Mercedes-Benz utilized the hard rubber dampers as temporary dampers in event of hydraulic failure. In 1977, the self-leveling rear suspension system was offered for $450 SEL as an extra cost option outside the North American market. You're now watching the start of the main assembly line. As you can see, both men and women worked here. Gradually, more and more parts are being added to the bodywork. Connecting the wiring and other components was done entirely by human workers without the help of robots. At the time this model was introduced, it was the best car in this category. In the 70s, this car had a futuristic interior full of novelties and luxurious equipment. Now the worker can easily mount the front dashboard. The rectangular headlamps were typical of this vintage Mercedes, giving the car an original and easy-to-remember look. The cars move across the entire car factory on a sliding belt, and gradually seats, steering wheel, interior trim, and other components are assembled into the car. The manufacturing process resembles a giant jigsaw puzzle. Each worker checked after the installation was completed to make sure everything was done properly and everything was working as it should. The entire front window is glued into the frame by 2 employees and then fixed with a rubber hammer. There were a large number of chrome features on this Mercedes, including the 280 SE badge. At the same time as the passenger cabin was being assembled, the chassis and engine were being prepared in another part of the factory. The W124 was presented in September 1972. The model range initially included 2 versions of the M110 engine, the 280S and the 280SE, plus the 350SE, powered by the M116 V8 engine. After the 1973 oil crisis, a long wheelbase 280 SEL was added to the model range. The 4.5-liter models were available with 3-speed automatic gearboxes only, while the models with smaller 3.5-liter V8 engine could be ordered with a 4-speed manual gearbox. The door cards had the velour or leather inserts. The production assembly process for the engine and transmission was carried out separately, similar to the Mercedes factory today. Here, the workers are specialized in small engine work. The W116's engine was one of the best you could buy in the 1970s. The most notable W116 model was the high-performance, limited production 450SEL 6.9, which was introduced in 1975. This model boasted the largest engine installed in a post-war Mercedes-Benz and any non-American production automobile up to that time, and it also featured self-leveling hydropneumatic suspension. The 450 SE was named the European Car of the Year in 1974. The W116 was succeeded by the W126 S-Class in 1979. The W116 was sold throughout Europe, the Americas, Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Australia. Here you can see how the shock absorbers were assembled. In 1978, a series of engine upgrades restored original performance levels with new fuel injection systems. At the end of the assembly line, just before the startup, there was still a rigorous quality control. Due to the high price of the cars, there was great emphasis on the final quality. The wheels and all the doors were the last to be fitted to the cars. Now the inspection officer will test all lights, wipers, horn, and other functionality from the driver's position. These Mercedes-Benz cars had one of the most iconic and popular features: small special headlight wipers. The Sindelfingen plant is the third largest car manufacturing plant in Germany, after the Volkswagen plant in Wolfsburg and the Audi plant in Ingolstadt. One of the last tests after the car was completed was a dyno test. This is where the car is pushed to top speed and the engine performance and correct shifting of the manual gearbox were tested. Transmission was either 4 and 5 speed in manual or 3 and 4 speed in automatic. The Mercedes S-Class W116 is a sportier car, a little more nimble and less boat-like. The interior design with wood paneling still makes a very pleasant impression today. The main assembly line in this German car factory was staffed mostly by men of German origin. By contrast, the Trabant car plant in East Germany was staffed mainly by people from abroad. Working in a Mercedes factory was a very prestigious occupation at the time, and the workers were well paid. The typically dominant Mercedes logo on the top of the front grille is still one of the most recognizable symbols today. If the car passed all the tests, it was stamped with a quality sticker and then loaded onto trucks or train axles and shipped all over Western Europe. The main market was, of course, Germany itself. These cars occasionally appeared in the countries of Eastern Communist Europe. However, it was not possible to buy this car on the regular market here. The S-Class is top-notch. This certainty has always been a defining characteristic of the luxury saloons. Highlights of the 116 series include the top model, 450 SEL 6.9, presented in 1975.
You want a full reference, 646.
Apart from the car itself, the attitude of Mercedes dealerships in the 1970s was also very good. The customer came first, and it was possible to properly test drive the car before buying it. People didn't buy this Mercedes model for 2 or 3 years, but for life. And it was with a focus on longevity that this car was invented and then assembled. Those were good times. But now you are already watching the production of the Mercedes-Benz W124 test prototype. It is the internal designation for the Mercedes 190 series sedan, a range of front engine, rear drive, 5-passenger, 4-door sedans manufactured over a single generation from 1982 to 1993 as the company's first compact class automobile. This is how the clay modeling and subsequent aerodynamic testing of the car took place. Clay modeling involves sculpting a full-scale model of a car using a special kind of industrial design clay. It helps designers and engineers see the car in physical space from every angle in real lighting. It allows for better evaluation of proportions, curves, stance, and reflections, which digital renderings often can't fully replicate. This is what the development looked like in 1981. This model was produced both in the German factory Bremen and Sindelfingen. Between 1982 and 1993, almost 1.9 million of these cars were produced. The W201 introduced a 5-link rear suspension subsequently used in E and C class models, front and rear anti-roll bars, anti-dive and anti-squat geometry, as well as airbags, ABS brakes, and seatbelt pretensioners. Its extensive use of lightweight, high-strength steel enabled it to withstand a concrete barrier offset crash at 35 miles per hour, which is 56 kilometers per hour, without serious passenger injury or cabin deformation. This model marked the company's entry into the compact executive car segment, which was previously untouched by the brand. This was first car to feature the patented multi-link rear suspension, which offered superior ride comfort and handling. It's a design still used today. The ride was tuned for both comfort and agility, striking a balance no one else in the segment had nailed yet. Mercedes built the W201 with full-sized car safety in mind, such as crash crumple zones, rigid passenger cell, advanced materials, and structural design. Reinforced door structures and fuel tank placement for side and rear impact safety. Mercedes invested nearly 2 billion Deutsche Marks into W201 development, a massive amount for a compact car, underlining their commitment to doing it right. It became one of the most successful models in Mercedes history at that time. Paved the way for the C-Class, which debuted in 1993 as its direct successor. Still praised for its build quality, ride comfort, and rock-solid engineering, many examples are still on the road, especially diesel variants. The goal was to ensure the baby Benz felt like a real Mercedes in every way, despite being a compact entry-level model. You are now watching engine performance testing and speed optimization. For the 1991 model year, the W201 received light exterior modifications. For instance, the door frames were now painted body color rather than being anodized black as before. Mercedes offered several different manual gearboxes, depending on engine size and market. The 5-speed manuals are prized today for their durability and driver engagement. Please let me know in the comments section below the video what model of old Mercedes cars you like best. This is how the noise immunity testing was carried out inside the cabin. The engineer's aim was to make the interior of the car as soundproof as possible. And now, for a change, you can compare the production processes at the Mercedes-Benz plant in Sindelfingen, Germany in 1995. Before the mid-1990s, Mercedes-Benz had a very strong reputation for quality and durability. Mercedes-Benz's passenger cars were considered as tanks or indestructible by owners who had their own Mercedes for a very long period. Some objective measures looking at passenger vehicles demonstrated a downturn in reputation in these criteria in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Electronic Stability Program, ESP, brake assist, and many other types of safety equipment were all developed, tested, and implemented into passenger cars, first by Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz has licensed some of its innovations for use by competitors. Crumple zones and ABS were included in 1990s safety legislation in Europe and the United States. On March 31, 2005, Mercedes recalled 1.3 million defective cars made since 2001 with bad electronics. This is the biggest recall they've ever made. In fact, it's hard to recall any serious recalls at all by Mercedes before 1999, when they only made quality. Mercedes-Benz isn't just a legendary luxury automaker. It's the original automaker. Modern-day Mercedes can trace its roots back to the very first automobile, constructed in 1886. Since then, the company has been an innovator, a trendsetter, a racing juggernaut, and a global status symbol. While AMG was completely independent of Mercedes for years, Daimler bought a majority of the company in 1999 and took over completely in 2005. And now for a comparison with East Communist Germany. You can see the production inside the Trabant factory. This is the Zwickau factory where the famous Trabant cars were made. Sachsenring was founded in 1957 and employed approximately 3,000 people. Sachsenring was one of the few manufacturers of vehicles in East Germany, its best-known product being the Trabant, produced between 1957 and 1991. The employees in the Zwickau factory were mostly East Germans. However, other nationalities also worked there. The most famous was the Trabant 601, whose production you are watching right now, which was produced from 1964 to 1990. It featured detachable Duroplast body panels on a galvanized steel unibody chassis, front-wheel drive, a transverse two-stroke engine, and independent suspension. Because this 1950s design remained largely unchanged until the introduction of the last model, the Trabant 1.1 in 1990, the Trabant became symbolic of the former East Germany's stagnant economy and the collapse of the Eastern Bloc in general. Quite revolutionary was the all-in-front concept. The transversely mounted engine was in front of the front axle, which it drove. Trabants may have been small, but they were quite demanding to produce. Due to the difficulty of molding the duroplast, the cars were made by hand, and it was literally the case that every car was an original. The most popular model, the Trabant 601, had the same engine and wheelbase as the previous 600. The Trabant 601 appearance has changed slightly, and the length and width of the body has increased. There are still some 33,000 Trabants roaming the streets of Germany today. The 1980s model had no tachometer, no indicator for either the headlights or turn signals, no fuel gauge, no rear seat belts, no external fuel door. Over the 27 years of Trabants, many subversions have been created. The basic type was a two-door limousine. The alternative was a three-door coupe. In richer equipment versions, the cars were enriched with fog lights or a speedometer. Women also worked in the Zwickau factory, but only about 15% of all workers. Working conditions in the Zwickau factories were very bad and unhealthy. In addition, from 1966, an off-road version without doors and with a canvas roof was produced for the East German Armed Forces. Because the Trabant had no fuel pump, its fuel tank was above the motor, so fuel could reach the carburetor by gravity. This increased the risk of fire in front-end accidents. Earlier models had no fuel gauge, and a dipstick was inserted into the tank to determine how much fuel remained. In contrast, the West German Volkswagen Beetle received a number of updates over a similar period. Its inefficient, labor-intensive production line had only survived thanks to government subsidies. Trabant P 601 also had an overrunning clutch when running in fourth gear. The Trabant excelled in its ability to pollute the environment. The exhaust fumes were terrible. Although Trabant production was relatively large, it was unable to meet the demand of the population. Quality control was carried out vigorously using a hammer and brute force. The doors and other body parts simply had to be bent to fit. Each car was equipped with a checklist where employees recorded the assembly performer. Thousands of East Germans drove their Trabants over the border when the wall fell, which made it a kind of automotive liberator.